What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitical Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed with everything that the government does. Now, can you get the government to seal up the porous nature of our southern border? Can you get them to stop the criminal aliens coming across the southern border? No, we can't do that. Can we get the government to ease up on taxes? No, as a matter of fact, Biden is wanting to tax unrealized gains. Yeah, I don't know if y'all have heard about that story, but yeah, that's outright insane. So in other words, if you buy a little bit of stock, say you spend, I don't know, $1,000 on some stock, and the next day it shoots way up in price, right? And so now maybe it goes up 100%, right? Maybe it goes up even more, right? So now that $1,000, let's say it's now worth $100,000, right? So yeah, they want you to pay taxes on that, and you're like, well, hang on, the money's tied up in the stock market. If you're absolutely broke, you'll have to sell some of that stock to pay for that. How stupid is that? Like I always say, Biden is trying to destroy the country. I don't know what these people think they're doing. The economy is in the tank. The stock market's down. Jobs are bad, right? Biden keeps touting, oh, we made so many jobs, blah, 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 blah. There's thousands of jobs. I've created millions of jobs. Nah, you're giving them to criminal aliens. So it's like, no, it doesn't matter. Everything that these people do is destroying the country bit by bit by bit. And folks, it is really getting desperate. I know it may sound like I'm being hyperbolic when I talk about this, but we've got to do something, folks. We've got to vote in somebody different. And I'm not just talking about the president. Of course, we need a new president, naturally, and we're going to get one. I can almost guarantee we will get a new president, but we need a new Congress as well. That is the big part of it, right? Like, because I've talked about this at length. Congress does not wield the power that they possess at all, right? Like we're just going to go along with what the establishment wants to do. Well, hang on. They are the establishment. It's like, what? You have the power of the purse in Congress, right? Johnson gets in there and he's like, yeah, we're going to do some change. We're going to be fiscally responsible. We're going to fight for conservative policies. And then what does he do? He gets in there and he just starts going right along with the establishment, spending billions of dollars, sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, right? Like, I know a lot of people, a lot of mainstream media people and a lot of people that don't really know what the hell they're talking about. They're screaming, we got to fund Ukraine. We got to fund Ukraine. Ukraine's borders are more important than our borders, for God's sakes. So these people capitulate and they give in, and then they send $60 billion to Ukraine, right? Like, this is getting outright insane, y'all. And I don't know what else I can do. I think I would love to run for Congress, to be honest with you, but I think if I did, I would get kicked out almost immediately, because I would go in there and I would tell every single one of these people that they're a piece of garbage. They're a piece of garbage, except for a handful of people, right? They're all garbage. They don't wield the power, like I said. They don't wield the power. They got the power of the purse. They could deny the Biden administration's budget. Just outright deny the budget. No, we're not going to approve this, right? But instead, what do? They approve $1.7 trillion spending in a deficit. $1.7 trillion of money that they have to borrow for a whole lot of nothing, a whole lot of BS. I've gone over those videos of, $1.5 million to encourage gaming in New York City, and $1 million over here to see if quails are more sexually promiscuous when they take cocaine. It's like, and it's just earmark after earmark after earmark, just nothing but BS, and these people vote for it, y'all. Right? Like, I think 90-something Republicans didn't vote for that appropriations package with those earmarks that I'm talking about. So it's like, what are the rest of the 300 and something members of Congress thinking? right? They're not thinking about America. They seem to could care less about America. But hang on, you get some anti-Semitism going on college campuses, and then all of a sudden, Mike Johnson's there in person talking about, we're going to send in the National Guard. Like, what? For a protest, right? I mean, the protests are kind of bad, and the protests are kind of insane because they are on the side of terrorists, and it's outright nuts. Like, if you hear some of these chants, you know, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that is an outright call for genocide, in case you guys didn't know that. But, you know, I think I've rambled on for long enough. Let's go ahead and get into the story today because, yeah, we had Supreme Court arguments today, and I listened to it. I had to sit through it, and man, dude, I was literally like wanting to reach through the screen and choke the damn Solicitor General that was arguing on behalf of the DOJ. Man, this dude was just, he was making these BS arguments that didn't make any sense whatsoever. But let's get into it. Check it out, y'all. U.S. High Court appears skeptical of Trump claim of absolute presidential immunity. Now, that title would make you think, oh, well, they're not going to rule in his favor. But that title is kind of incorrect. I wouldn't say they were skeptical of Trump's absolute immunity claim at all. And like I talked about on the last video, Trump saying absolute immunity doesn't mean absolute immunity, if you know what I mean. I explained that outright, and I'll explain it again, but let's get into the story and break this all down right quick. The Supreme Court on Thursday appeared likely to reject former President Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity from prosecution over election interference, but it seemed possible Trump could still benefit from a lengthy trial delay, possibly beyond November's election. No, that it didn't seem like that whatsoever. I listened to the entirety of the 3-hour arguments, and they didn't seem skeptical at all. They seemed very curious, and they actually seemed kind of worried that if they rule in such a way that doesn't give immunity to presidents, that we will have just a back and forth, a tit for tat, if you will, of prosecution, election, more prosecutions, new election. It'll just be back and forth because the opposition will go after the opposition, obviously, and prosecute them for little to nothing, right? And you know what the defense, the Solicitor General's defense for that was? Oh, well, we need to put faith in the Department of Justice to be honest. Yeah, as the Department of Justice has been weaponized and going after innocent people, yeah, let's trust the DOJ. That is the most ridiculous argument I think I could ever hear, but let's keep going. Chief Justice Roberts was among at least 5 members of the court who did not appear to embrace the claim of absolute immunity that would stop Special Counsel Jack Smith's prosecution of Trump on charges he conspired to overturn his 2020 election loss to Democrat Joe Biden. Yeah, that is correct, but with a caveat that they seem like they're going to send this back to the lower court. But in arguments lasting more than 2.5 hours in the court's first consideration of criminal charges against a former president, Roberts also was among several justices who suggested that the case might have to be sent back to lower courts before any trial could begin. Roberts indicated he was unhappy with the reasoning adopted by the federal appeals court that ruled against Trump. That is kind of fair, except for the fact that he said that, I'm going to paraphrase right here, that was the most inept ruling he has ever heard from a lower court. Yeah, that's what he basically said. I can't remember his exact words, and I didn't record the audio of the entire 3-hour piece, so I'm not going to play that out, obviously, because I don't have it. But, yeah, he basically said that was the dumbest ruling that he has ever heard. You know, I kind of went over that yesterday too. That really was stupid. But yeah, he seems like they're going to force the lower court to decide whether Trump's actions were official actions or unofficial actions, right? Like, because that's what the whole thing is, right? Like, if it was official actions, then he should have immunity. If they were unofficial actions, then no, he doesn't have immunity. And that's the crux of the entirety of this case, of the entirety of the whole deal. And they completely just brushed right over that. They didn't answer that question, and Justice Roberts was like, this is obvious. This should have been answered by the lower courts in the first place. Why did they not do this? Like he said, the most inept ruling that he has ever heard. And it blew my freaking mind when he was like, just outright just saying that, like, holy crap, he's basically calling the judges dumbasses. The timing of the Supreme Court's decision could be as important as the outcome. Trump, the presumptive 2024 Republican presidential nominee, has been pushing to delay the trial until after the election, and the later the justices issue their decision, the more likely he is to succeed. The active questioning of all 9 justices left the strong impression that the court was not headed for the sort of speedy consensus decision that would allow a trial to begin quickly. Yeah, that's a fair assessment of that. Yeah, it seems like they're going to mull over this for a while because, like Justice Kavanaugh said, yeah, this is a decision for the ages. This is going to impact the future of this country. This is a very important decision. And that's why a lot of people were pissed that Trump didn't show up to this thing because, this, once again, this is going to impact every single presidency from now on, depending which way they rule. Because if they rule that, unofficial acts of a president do not have immunity, or even official acts, right? If they decide that, most everything that the president does isn't an official act, because the president has sole authority over certain things, like pardons, and there's a few other things. I don't remember all of them right off because that was, like I said, that was this morning, blah, 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 but he has sole discretion basically over certain things, but everything else could be considered. He's not immune to his actions on that, right? Like they even brought up, Justice Thomas brought up Obama being prosecuted criminally for drone strikes, right? Like we've talked about that before. Abdul al-Rahman al-Awlaki was killed. It was an extrajudicial assassination, essentially, if you want to put it in legal terms. That's how you would say that, but that's what that was. He was an American citizen killed in a cafe somewhere, I think in Yemen, right? A drone strike just killed this guy. He was totally innocent. He didn't do anything wrong. He was a 16-year-old kid. And Obama had him killed. And it was a mistake. Right? So that he could be criminally charged for that. And like I said in the other video, what about Bush lying to the American people to get Congress to approve war? Right? Where untold numbers of people were killed. That could be prosecuted if they decide that the president doesn't have immunity under this crap. It's going to be outright insanity. Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, 2 of Trump's 3 high court appointees, suggested that former presidents might have some immunity and that in this case, lower courts might have to sort out whether that applied to Trump. That could further delay a trial. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the other Trump appointee, seemed less open to arguments advanced by Trump lawyer John Sawyer. Here we go with the corporate press lying outright, y'all. Trump's lawyers argue that former presidents are entitled to absolute immunity for their official acts. Otherwise, they say, politically motivated prosecutions of former occupants of the Oval Office would become routine, and presidents couldn't function as the commander-in-chief if they had to worry about criminal charges. No, that is a lie. That is not what he's arguing whatsoever. And John Sawyer, I do not know why they worded that paragraph in that way, because that's an outright lie. That is not what John Sawyer said at all. I said this yesterday because I've heard his arguments before, so I know what his arguments are. His arguments are that the only way you can prosecute a president for actions taken official or unofficial while he's president is to impeach that president, convict him in the Senate, and then you can prosecute him in a court of law. So that's how they're getting around the truth right there. Sure, he does have absolute immunity until you impeach him and convict him in the Senate. Blows my freaking mind. They just leave that tidbit out, making that an outright lie. That's not what John Sawyer said. That is in the Constitution, by the way. That's why the impeachment process was put in there in the first place, was to, any politicians or anything that commit criminal acts while they're in office, they have to be impeached first, and then you can go after them criminally. Otherwise, like he said, you couldn't function as a commander-in-chief if you do a drone strike or something like that. And then you have to worry about, when you come out of office, some rogue prosecutor charging you with murder, right? It just makes no sense for the president and for certain officials not to have immunity. It makes no sense whatsoever. And the opposition to this is like, no, that he shouldn't have immunity for anything. It's like, what? Just blows your freaking mind. Like, they argue, presidents have to make tough decisions. They can't be thinking about, am I going to get prosecuted for this drone strike or whatever if I decide to do this and it's a mistake. We can't have a commander-in-chief scared of prosecution, essentially. And that's just one of the core tenets of the Constitution, for God's sakes. These people need to be able to operate and function as the executive branch to uphold and enforce the laws that Congress makes. So if he's scared to enforce the law because of repercussions from the opposition party, then what the hell are we going to turn into as a country? Yeah, that will blow your mind when you think about that for a few minutes. Lower courts have rejected those arguments, including a unanimous 3-judge panel of an appeals court in Washington. The election interference conspiracy case brought by Smith in Washington is one of 4 criminal cases confronting Trump. Blah, 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 blah. Smith's team says the men who wrote Constitution... Yeah, they screwed up on that. Smith's team says the men who wrote the Constitution never intended for presidents to be above the law, and that, in any event, the acts Trump is charged with, including participating in a scheme to enlist fake electors in battleground states won by Biden, aren't in any way part of a president's official duties. No, they're not. I would have to agree with that, and I did agree with him on that one. But, however, Trump didn't employ fake electors, right? It's called, the technical term for that is an alternate slate of electors, right? There was election fraud during the 2020 election, or I'm going to say there was evidence of election fraud during the 2020 election that was being investigated by the Trump campaign, right? So, okay, so we have all this fraud. He, in his mind, knew that there was fraud, right? So, in that case, if you win these court cases, which he brought to court, those fraud cases, there was a bunch of them. There was like 64 cases or something like that, which he lost a bunch of them. But a bunch of them were just turned away upon standing. They didn't even want to look at the evidence. They just said, we're not touching this, including the Supreme Court. But if the courts ruled that, yes, there was fraud and it was enough to sway the election in Trump's favor, he would need electors, a slate of electors that would be put in place of the fake electors that were actually there from the fraud, in other words. The fraudulent electors that were actually certified originally. So you would have to have an alternate slate of electors take those electors' places. Yeah, that's what that is. That's not fake electors. I'm sorry. Everybody out there is talking about, it's fake electors. No, it's bullshit. It's alternate slates of electors that only get put in place. They only certify their electorate if the court cases deem them certifiable, in other words. So, I don't want to hear anything anymore about fake electors because that's outright BS. Nearly 4 years ago, all 9 justices rejected Trump's claim of absolute immunity from a district attorney's subpoena for his financial records. That case played out during Trump's presidency and involved a criminal investigation, but no charges. Justice Clarence Thomas, who would have prevented the enforcement of this subpoena because of Trump's responsibilities as president, still rejected Trump's claim of absolute immunity and pointed to the text of the Constitution and how it was understood by the people who ratified it. The text of the Constitution does not afford the president absolute immunity, Thomas wrote in 2020. Right, and like I said, he doesn't have absolute immunity. He has to be impeached, convicted, and then you can prosecute the president. The court has several options for deciding the case. The justices could reject Trump's arguments and unfreeze the case so that U.S. District Tanya Chutkan can resume trial preparations, which she has indicated may last up to 3 months. The court could end Smith's prosecution by declaring for the first time that former presidents may not be prosecuted for official acts they took while in office. It also might spell out when former presidents are shielded from prosecution and either declare that Trump's alleged conduct easily crossed that line or return the case to Chutkan so that she can decide whether Trump should have to stand trial. Yes. And we will see. Whenever they make their decision or whatever, we will see. I have a strong feeling that they're not skeptical of it, right? Like, they are taking this very seriously, right? They know that, yes, a president does need some form of immunity, right? And Trump being Trump, he says absolute immunity, but we all know that he's hyperbolic with everything he says. And the corporate press takes that narrative and just runs with it. Oh, no, he's going to have absolute immunity. That means he's king for life, right? Like, what's-her-face said on MSNBC, said, oh, he'll never come out of office. Like, go ahead and shut up with that one. But it seems like what they're going to do is they're going to kick it back to the lower courts and make them decide if his acts, you know, for the electors and all that other stuff, was an official act or unofficial act. And to be honest with you, I have no idea how they're going to decide. So the corporate press saying, oh, they seem skeptical. Yeah, I didn't get that from them. I do believe from their questions, they totally understood the gravity of this situation and the gravity of not affording the president some sort of immunity. Yeah, that's detrimental to the country's future, by the way. But that's all I got for this one, y'all. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section, because I'm curious to hear from you guys about exactly what you think. Should presidents be immune for everything? Should they have absolute immunity? Or do you think that, yeah, if they drone strike and kill an American citizen unjustly, then yeah, they should probably be prosecuted for that? Let me know what you think down in the comment section. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.